The last bond we're going to talk about is the hydrogen bond. And as the name suggests, it involves hydrogen. Hydrogen bonds occur between polar molecules. So what this means is that before a hydrogen bond can form, you have to have another bond that forms a polar covalent bond. Okay? What happens in a hydrogen bond is that the partially positive side of one polar molecule is attracted to the partially negative side of another polar molecule. Okay? So here we see 4 water molecules, and don't forget water is polar. Like the oxygen has the partial negative charge and the hydrogens have partial positive charges. Right? So we definitely have polarity here. If you look at these water molecules, they're aligned in a certain way such that the partially negative oxygen on one water is facing the partially positive hydrogens on other waters. Right? So let's look at this one right here. So this partially negative oxygen is facing this partially positive hydrogen. And we see this dashed line here. That dashed line there is representing a hydrogen bond. The partially positive hydrogen is attracted to the partially negative oxygen. That's a hydrogen bond. Here's another hydrogen bond. Here's another hydrogen bond. Hydrogen bonds are often represented as dashed or dotted lines. Hydrogen bonds are the weakest of all the bond types. They're weaker than the covalent and the ionic. If you've ever jumped into a pool of water, you've broken the hydrogen bonds between water molecules. You probably notice that they're not that strong. Hydrogen bonds are found in places other than between water molecules. For example, you probably recognize the structure here. It's also behind me. That's DNA. And one of the things that holds DNA together is hydrogen bonds. If you look here in this spiral structure, you'll see these little dotted lines, right? Don't forget I said that hydrogen bonds are often represented by dotted lines. So the hydrogen bonds are labeled here, right? This is a close-up of those hydrogen bonds. O dot 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 H. This is a partially positive hydrogen that's facing a partially negative oxygen. So those opposite charges are just attracted and hang out by each other. Partially negative nitrogen attracted to partially positive hydrogen, and then the same all down here. So, review for hydrogen bonds. Hydrogen bonds form when the positive hydrogen from a polar molecule is attracted to the negative side of another polar molecule. And don't forget, these are partial charges too. So here we have a polar covalent bond making this a partially positive hydrogen, another polar covalent bond making this oxygen partially negative, and the opposite charges attract, forming the hydrogen bond.